I'm Emma, 29 years old, and at what was supposed to be a family reunion, my parents drugged me, used my unconscious face to unlock my phone, and stole the $85,000 I'd spent years saving for my first home. When I confronted them the next morning, my father hit me. That night, I realized family wasn't about blood. It was about trust, and mine had shattered forever. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. And thanks for being here. I live in Portland, Oregon, where I work as a civil engineer for the city's transportation department. But I grew up 300 miles south in a cramped rental house in Bakersfield, California, where my father, Gary Miller, spent more time at the racetrack than he did at his job as a warehouse supervisor. My earliest memory isn't of birthday parties or family vacations. It's of my mother, Nancy, frantically searching through couch cushions for loose change, while my father sat at the kitchen table, studying racing forms with the intensity of a scholar. I was 6 years old, and I remember asking why we couldn't just go to the bank like other families did when they needed money. "The bank doesn't understand people like us, sweetie," my mother had said, her voice tight with that familiar stress I'd grown to recognize. "Your daddy's just having a rough patch. His luck will turn around soon." But Gary Miller's luck never turned around. If anything, it got worse. I learned early that anything of value in our house had a shelf life. The nice Christmas presents would disappear by February, sold to whatever pawn shop would take them. My school clothes came from thrift stores, and even those sometimes vanished when Gary needed quick cash for what he called a sure thing at the track. When I was 8, I saved up $27 from helping our neighbor Mrs. Peterson with her grocery bags. I kept it in a small jewelry box shaped like a ballerina that my grandmother had given me for my birthday. One morning, I woke up and found the box empty, sitting open on my dresser like a mouth with all its teeth pulled out. Gary was making coffee in the kitchen, humming to himself like nothing had happened. "Dad, my money's gone," I said, holding up the empty box. He didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Borrowed it, sweetheart. Had a hot tip on a horse named Dancing Queen. Couldn't pass it up. I'll pay you back double when she comes in." Dancing Queen finished dead last. This became the pattern. Gary would borrow money from anyone who had it. Me, my younger brother Tyler, my mother's purse, the coffee can where we kept grocery money. Nancy enabled every bit of it, always with some variation of the same excuse. "He's under pressure, he's trying his best. He just needs one good win to turn everything around." By the time I was 12, I'd learned to hide money in places they'd never think to look. Inside my science textbook, taped under my desk drawer, sewn into the lining of my winter coat. I became an expert at making myself invisible whenever Gary came home with that particular look in his eyes. The one that meant he'd lost big and needed to find something to sell. The worst part wasn't the theft. It was the way they made me feel guilty for being upset about it. "Family shares everything," Nancy would say whenever I complained. "Your father works hard to keep a roof over your head. The least you can do is help out when he needs it." But Gary's version of working hard mostly involved showing up late, calling in sick, and eventually getting fired from one warehouse job after another. By the time I was in high school, Nancy was working double shifts as a cashier at the local Walmart just to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, Gary had graduated from horses to poker. He'd disappear for entire weekends, coming home either flush with cash and buying everyone dinner at Denny's, or broke and desperate, pawning Nancy's wedding ring for the 3rd time that year. The breaking point came during my senior year. I'd been working at a local pizza place after school, saving every penny for college. I had almost $3,000, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I kept it in a savings account at a credit union across town, somewhere I thought my parents would never think to look. I was wrong. I came home from work one Tuesday evening to find Gary sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him. Nancy was standing behind him, wringing her hands. "Emma, honey, we need to talk," she said, but her voice was shaking. Gary looked up at me with this satisfied smirk that made my stomach drop. "Turns out you can't open a bank account when you're under 18 without a parent's signature. Funny how that works." He'd found out about the account somehow, probably by going through my mail, and had walked into the credit union with my birth certificate and social security card. As my father and joint account holder, he had every legal right to withdraw every penny. "I needed it for something important," he said, like he was explaining why he'd borrowed my car instead of stealing my entire future. There's a high-stakes game this weekend. I've got inside information, can't lose. I'll pay you back triple. I stared at those papers, withdrawal slips totaling $2,147. 3 years of pizza grease burns and weekend shifts, gone. That was for college, I whispered. College? Gary laughed. Actually laughed. Honey, college is for rich people. You think some fancy degree is going to make you better than your family? Nancy stepped forward. Your father's going to win big this weekend, Emma. You'll see. We'll be able to pay for college and then some. But I was done believing in Gary Miller's sure things. I walked to my room, packed everything that mattered into 2 suitcases, and called my high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She'd been helping me apply for scholarships and had mentioned something about emergency housing for students in crisis. 3 days later, I was living in a studio apartment above a coffee shop downtown, paying rent by working the morning shift. I finished high school while sleeping on a futon and eating nothing but ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, but I finished. And when graduation came, I walked across that stage, knowing I'd earned every step myself. Gary and Nancy didn't come to my graduation. They said they were too embarrassed that I'd abandoned the family over money, as if the money was the problem and not the 20 years of broken promises and stolen dreams that came before it. I left Bakersfield the day after graduation with $400, a partial scholarship to Oregon State University, and a promise to myself that I would never depend on anyone else again. College wasn't easy, but it was the first time in my life that I felt like I had control over my future. I studied civil engineering because I loved the idea of building things that would last. Bridges, roads, structures that would still be standing long after I was gone. It felt like the opposite of everything I'd grown up with. I worked 3 part-time jobs to pay for what my scholarships didn't cover. Tutoring math in the campus learning center, waiting tables at a sports bar on weekends, and doing data entry for the engineering department. I lived in the cheapest dorm room available and bought all my textbooks used. While my classmates went to parties and spring break trips, I was usually working or studying in the library until it closed. But slowly, steadily, I built something solid. My grades were good enough to earn me a partial research assistantship my junior year. I made friends with other students who worked as hard as I did. I learned what it felt like to go to sleep without worrying about whether I'd have lunch money the next day. The hardest part was staying away from family. Gary and Nancy called every few months, usually when they needed something, a car repair, a medical bill, help with rent. I said no every time, which earned me the title of selfish and ungrateful in conversations with extended family. Your parents are struggling, my Aunt Carol would say during the rare phone calls I still took from Bakersfield. Your father's been looking for work, but the economy's tough. They could really use some help. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been sending my parents money for the first 2 years of college. Small amounts, $50 or $100, when they called crying about shut-off notices and eviction threats. It took me that long to realize that the crisis was always urgent, always immediate, and always my responsibility to fix. The final straw came during my sophomore year. Nancy called sobbing, saying they were about to lose the house. She needed $800 by Friday, or they'd be on the street. I scraped together the money by picking up extra shifts and borrowing from my emergency fund. I sent it via Western Union, feeling sick about it, but unable to ignore my mother's tears. 2 weeks later, Tyler called me. My younger brother had always been more observant than anyone gave him credit for. Emma, you know that $800 you sent for the house payment? Dad blew it all at the casino. Mom's working triple shifts now to actually make the payment. That was it. No more money, no more bailouts, no more enabling their destructive cycle. I changed my phone number and only gave the new one to Tyler and my grandmother on my mother's side. For 3 years, I had blessed silence. I finished my degree, got hired by the city of Portland, and started building the kind of stable life I'd dreamed about since I was 8 years old. I rented a small apartment in Southeast Portland, bought a reliable used car, and started a savings account that no one else could touch. By my 29th birthday this past March, I had $85,000 in savings. It wasn't just money. It was proof that I could take care of myself, that I could build something lasting and secure. I was planning to use it as a down payment on a house, my first real home. I should have known it was too good to last. The call came on a Tuesday evening in May. I was making dinner in my kitchen, listening to a podcast about sustainable urban planning, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Emma? Oh, honey, it's Mom. Nancy's voice hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't spoken to either of my parents in over 3 years. How did you get this number? I asked, turning off the stove. Tyler gave it to me. Emma, I know you're angry with us, and maybe we deserve that. But your father, he's been having some health problems, heart trouble. The doctors say he needs to reduce stress, and, well, seeing the family so divided is really weighing on him. I closed my eyes. Of course it was a health crisis. Of course it was something designed to make me feel guilty. What do you want, Mom? We're having a family reunion next month. Just a small one, your father's siblings, a few cousins. It's been so long since we've all been together, and with Gary's health scare. Emma, I just want my family to be whole again. Can you come, just for one weekend? I found myself pacing around my small living room. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I know things ended badly between us, but that was years ago. We've all changed. Your father's different now. The health scare really shook him up. And we miss you so much, honey. We want to know about your life, your job, everything we've missed. There was something in her voice that I hadn't heard in years. Genuine emotion, maybe even regret. Against every instinct I'd developed over the past decade, I found myself wavering. I'll think about it, I said finally. Oh, thank you. The reunion's the second weekend in June, here at the house. You remember where we live, right? Same place? Emma, this could be a fresh start for all of us. After I hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at my phone. Tyler texted me an hour later. Mom said she talked to you. You don't have to go, you know. They haven't changed as much as she's pretending. But maybe that was exactly why I needed to go. To prove to myself that I really had moved beyond all of this. That I was strong enough now to face them and walk away unaffected. I booked a flight to Bakersfield for the second weekend in June. The house looked different. That was my first thought as I pulled my rental car into the driveway that Saturday afternoon. The yard, which I remembered as patchy and overgrown, was now professionally landscaped with drought-resistant plants and a gravel pathway leading to the front door. The exterior had been repainted a soft gray with white trim, and there were new windows throughout. Gary came out to greet me before I'd even turned off the engine. He looked older, grayer, but his smile was the same practiced charm I remembered from childhood. There she is, my successful daughter. He wrapped me in a hug that I didn't return. Look at you, all grown up and fancy. I heard you're some kind of city engineer now. Civil engineer, I corrected, grabbing my overnight bag from the back seat. Even better, building bridges and roads and all that. I always knew you were the smart one. Nancy appeared in the doorway, wearing a dress I didn't recognize, and jewelry that definitely hadn't been in her collection the last time I'd seen her. She looked comfortable, well-fed, like someone who hadn't worried about money in a while. Emma! Oh, my baby! She rushed over and hugged me tight. And for a moment I was 8 years old again, breathing in her familiar perfume and feeling safe in her arms. You look wonderful. Doesn't she look wonderful, Gary? Beautiful as always. Come on, let's get you inside. Everyone's dying to see you. The interior renovations were even more dramatic. Gone was the worn carpet I remembered, replaced with hardwood floors that gleamed under new recessed lighting. The kitchen had been completely redone with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. A massive flat-screen TV dominated the living room wall. Wow, I said, setting my bag down. You guys have really fixed the place up. Gary's chest puffed out with pride. Been doing some contracting work on the side. Business has been booming lately. Finally got to make all the improvements Nancy's been wanting for years. Contracting work? I tried to keep the skepticism out of my voice. Gary had never shown any aptitude for manual labor beyond the bare minimum required to keep his warehouse jobs. Mostly project management, Nancy jumped in quickly. Your father's always been good with people. He connects homeowners with contractors, handles the logistics. Very successful. I nodded politely, but something felt off. The renovations looked expensive, definitely more than Gary could afford on project management fees, especially given his track record with money. Well, it looks great, I said. When do the others get here? Tyler should be here soon. He drove down from Sacramento. Your Uncle Bob and Aunt Janet are coming around 6, along with their kids. Oh, and your cousin Michelle is bringing her new boyfriend. It'll be just like old times. As if on cue, Tyler's truck pulled into the driveway. My younger brother looked good, healthier than I'd seen him in years. He'd always been the family peacekeeper, trying to smooth over conflicts and keep everyone happy. Seeing him gave me the first genuine smile I'd felt since arriving. Emma, he hugged me properly, not the performative embrace Gary had given me. I can't believe you actually came. Me neither, I whispered back. The afternoon passed pleasantly enough. Uncle Bob and Aunt Janet arrived with their teenage kids, who barely looked up from their phones to acknowledge anyone. Cousin Michelle brought her boyfriend Derek, a quiet guy who seemed overwhelmed by the Miller family dynamics. Dinner was catered, expensive-looking spread from a local restaurant that definitely hadn't existed when I was growing up. Nancy kept apologizing for not cooking herself, claiming she'd been too busy preparing the house for everyone. This is incredible, Aunt Janet said, helping herself to more of the salmon. Nancy, you and Gary are really living it up these days, Gary laughed, raising his beer bottle. Hard work pays off eventually. We're just grateful to finally be in a position to spoil our family a little. I caught Tyler's eye across the table. He gave me a look that said we'd talk later. As the evening wore on, I noticed how many questions Gary and Nancy asked about my life in Portland. Not just polite catch-up questions, but detailed inquiries about my salary, my benefits, my savings. When I mentioned that I was looking at buying a house, Nancy's eyes lit up. A house? That's wonderful, honey. You must be doing very well for yourself. Are you working with a financial advisor? Managing all that money can be tricky. I'm doing fine, I said carefully. I've always been good with money. Of course you have, Gary said, but there was something in his tone that made me uncomfortable. You get that from me. I've always had a head for finances. Tyler actually snorted at that, quickly covering it with a cough when Gary shot him a look. Around 10 o'clock, people started heading home or to their hotels. Only Tyler and I were staying at the house, me in my old room, which had been converted into a guest bedroom, and Tyler on the couch. Nancy had insisted on making me a nightcap. My famous Moscow Mule, she called it, served in a copper mug with fresh mint. It was stronger than I expected, and between the alcohol and the emotional exhaustion of being back in this house, I felt unusually drowsy. I think I'm going to turn in, I said, standing up from the kitchen table where we'd been looking at old photo albums. Of course, honey, you must be tired. Your room's all ready for you. I said goodnight to Tyler, who was settling in on the couch with a book, and headed down the hallway to my old room. Nancy had done her best to make it welcoming. Fresh flowers on the nightstand, new bedding, even some of my old stuffed animals arranged on the dresser. I set my purse on the nightstand, plugged in my phone to charge, and changed into pajamas. The bed was comfortable, more comfortable than I remembered, and I fell asleep almost immediately. I should have known something was wrong when I didn't wake up once during the night. I'm usually a light sleeper, especially in unfamiliar places, but that night I slept like I was unconscious, deep and dreamless and complete. My phone was buzzing. That's what finally pulled me out of sleep at 8:30 Sunday morning. Not the sunlight streaming through the curtains or the sounds of Gary and Nancy moving around the house, but the insistent vibration of my phone, receiving notification after notification. I fumbled for it on the nightstand, squinting at the screen through bleary eyes. 15 missed calls from my bank, 23 text messages with fraud alerts, 12 emails with transaction notifications. My heart started pounding before my brain had fully processed what I was seeing. I opened my banking app with shaking fingers, entering my password and waiting for the balance to load. $127.43. Yesterday, that account had contained $85,247. My entire life savings gone. I sat up so fast I got dizzy, scrolling frantically through the transaction history. 6 wire transfers, all processed between 3:17 and 4:52 a.m. while I slept. $15,000 to an account belonging to Gary Miller, $20,000 to an account belonging to Nancy Miller, $18,000 to an account belonging to Robert Miller, Uncle Bob, $12,000 to an account belonging to Michelle Patterson, my cousin, $10,000 to an account belonging to Derek Walsh, Michelle's boyfriend. $8,000 to an account belonging to Tyler Miller. I called the bank's fraud hotline with trembling hands, barely able to speak when the representative answered. Yes, Miss Miller, we show multiple large transfers from your account last night. Our system flagged them for suspicious activity, which is why we've been trying to reach you. I didn't authorize any transfers, I said, my voice coming out as a whisper. Someone accessed my account without permission. I understand your concern, but according to our records, the transfers were initiated using your mobile banking app from a device registered to your account. The authentication was completed using facial recognition technology. Are you saying someone else had access to your phone and was able to unlock it using your face? The room started spinning. I remembered the Moscow Mule. How unusually tired I'd felt, how deeply I'd slept. They had drugged me. My own parents had drugged me and used my unconscious face to unlock my phone and steal my money. Where did the money go? I asked, though I already knew. I can see that the funds were transferred to 6 different accounts. Would you like me to read you the names? No, I said quickly. I need to report this as fraud. I need all of those accounts frozen immediately. I'll start a fraud investigation right away, Miss Miller. In the meantime, I recommend you contact local law enforcement. This appears to be a case of identity theft. I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. $85,000. 3 years of careful saving, of living below my means, of building a secure future. Gone. I could hear voices from the kitchen, Gary's booming laugh, Nancy chattering about breakfast plans. They were celebrating while I sat in their guest room, financially devastated. I got dressed quickly and walked down the hallway on unsteady legs. Gary was sitting at the kitchen table reading the Sunday paper, drinking coffee from a new Keurig machine I hadn't noticed the night before. Nancy was at the stove making pancakes, humming to herself. Morning, sleepyhead, she called cheerfully. I was wondering when you'd get up. I'm making your favorite blueberry pancakes. I stopped in the doorway, my phone clutched in my hand. My money is gone. Gary looked up from his paper with an expression of mild curiosity. What's that now? My bank account. $85,000. It's gone. Transferred out in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. Nancy turned around, spatula in hand, her face a picture of concern. Oh, honey, that's terrible. Identity theft is such a problem these days. Did you call the bank? I called the bank, I said, stepping into the kitchen. The money was transferred to accounts belonging to you, Dad, Uncle Bob, Michelle, Derek, and Tyler. While I was unconscious in your house. The silence that followed was deafening. Gary set down his newspaper slowly, his expression shifting from fake concern to something harder. Now, Emma, he said in the tone he'd used when I was a child and had accused him of something he didn't want to admit to. That's a pretty serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's what happened. Nancy set down the spatula and turned to face me fully. Honey, you had several drinks last night. Maybe you're confused about. I had one drink. That you made, that you insisted I drink. My voice was getting louder, but I couldn't help it. What did you put in it? Emma, you're being ridiculous, Gary said, standing up from the table. Nobody put anything in your drink. If someone accessed your account, it wasn't us. The transfers were made using my phone and my face while I was unconscious. You drugged me. Gary's mask finally slipped completely. Prove it. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and in that moment I saw him clearly for the first time in years. Not the charming father who told jokes and promised the moon. Not the struggling man who just needed one more chance, but the predator who had been circling me my entire life, waiting for the right moment to strike. Give me my money back, I said quietly. Gary laughed, actually laughed. What money? I don't know anything about your money. $85,000. Transfer it back to my account. Now. Even if I had access to that kind of money, which I don't, why would I give it to you? You've made it clear you don't consider yourself part of this family. Because it's mine. Because you stole it. Stole. Gary stepped closer, and I could see the anger building in his face. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, everything we've sacrificed, you come into our house and accuse us of being thieves? What have you sacrificed? What have you ever done for me except take? I gave you life, Gary was shouting now, his face red. I put a roof over your head for 18 years. Fed you, clothed you, drove you to school every day. Everything you have, everything you've accomplished, is because of what I gave you. You gave me trauma and trust issues. That's what you gave me. How dare you, Gary stepped forward again, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. How dare you come into my house and disrespect me like this? Your house that you paid for with my money, that's when he hit me. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. One moment, I was standing there arguing with him, and the next moment, my head was snapping to the side, and I was stumbling backward into the kitchen counter, my cheek exploding with pain. Nancy gasped but didn't move to help me. She just stood there by the stove, holding her spatula like it was a shield. I straightened up slowly, my hand pressed to my burning cheek. Gary was breathing hard, his fist still clenched at his side. "Don't you ever," he said in a low, dangerous voice, "disrespect me in my own house again. I am your father. You will show me the respect I deserve, or you can get the hell out." I looked at Nancy, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to show some sign that she disapproved of her husband hitting their daughter. But she just stood there, silent and complicit as always. "You're right," I said quietly. "I should get the hell out." I walked past Gary, who stepped aside with a satisfied smirk, and headed for the guest room to pack my bag. Behind me, I could hear Nancy trying to smooth things over. "Gary, maybe that was a little harsh. Emma, honey, why don't we all just calm down and talk about this rationally?" But I was done talking. I was done trying to have rational conversations with people who had spent my entire life manipulating and stealing from me. I had my phone in my hand before I'd even reached the bedroom, dialing Tyler's number. "Emma, what's wrong? I heard shouting." "Where are you?" "Getting coffee at that place on Ming Avenue." "Why? What happened?" "They stole my money, Tyler. $85,000. And when I confronted them about it, Dad hit me." Silence on the other end of the line. "Tyler, I'm coming back. Don't leave. Don't go anywhere until I get there." "I can't stay here." "Yes, you can. You're going to pack your stuff and you're going to wait for me, and then we're going to figure out how to destroy them. Legally." The conviction in his voice surprised me. Tyler had always been the peacekeeper, the one who tried to smooth over family conflicts, but something in his tone told me that this time was different. "Tyler, did you know about the money transfer to your account?" Another pause. "We'll talk when I get there. But Emma, I'm on your side. I've always been on your side." Tyler arrived 20 minutes later, bursting through the front door like he owned the place. I was sitting on the front porch with my packed bag, holding a bag of frozen peas to my swollen cheek. "Let me see," he said, gently moving the peas aside to examine the bruise forming on my face. "That bastard." "It's not the first time," I said quietly. "I know, I remember." Tyler sat down beside me on the porch steps. "Emma, about the money transfer to my account, I didn't know they were going to do it. I woke up this morning to a text from my bank saying I'd received a $10,000 deposit. I called them immediately to reverse it, but they said it had to come from the originating account holder. You tried to send it back." "Of course I tried to send it back. It's your money, not mine. I've been trying to figure out how to reach you all morning." Relief flooded through me. Tyler wasn't part of this conspiracy. I still had one family member I could trust. "Do you know how they did it?" Tyler pulled out his phone and showed me a text thread with our cousin Michelle from early that morning. She texted me asking if I knew why Derek had gotten money from you. Apparently he woke up to $12,000 in his account and freaked out. He thought it was some kind of money laundering thing. "What about Uncle Bob and Michelle?" "That's where it gets interesting." Tyler scrolled through more messages. Uncle Bob is confused, but apparently not upset about getting $18,000. Michelle is, well, she's acting like she expected it. Expected it? Look at this text from her. "I figured Emma would want to help family now that she's doing so well. It's about time she shared some of that tech money." I stared at the message. "Tech money?" "She thinks you work in tech. Apparently Gary and Nancy have been telling everyone you're some kind of software engineer making bank in Portland. They've been bragging about your success for months, telling people you're practically rich." The pieces were starting to fall into place. The reunion invitation, the questions about my finances, the sudden renovations to the house. This hadn't been a spontaneous crime of opportunity. This had been planned. They've been setting this up for months, I said slowly. The whole reunion was a setup. Looks like it. Tyler stood up and paced across the small porch. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I'm going to destroy them. Tyler stopped pacing and looked at me. Good. Because I've been waiting my whole life to see someone finally hold them accountable. The front door opened and Nancy stepped out, wringing her hands and looking nervous. Emma, honey, your father feels terrible about what happened. He's under a lot of stress with his health and all. Maybe we could all sit down and work this out as a family. The only thing I want to work out is getting my money back, I said, not bothering to stand up. Honey, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Your father doesn't have access to your bank account. Maybe someone else. Mom, Tyler interrupted. Stop. We know what you did. Emma's going to call the police, and then she's going to press charges for theft and fraud. Nancy's face went white. Tyler, you don't understand. This family has been through so much. Your father's been working so hard to get back on his feet. That money, we just needed it to get caught up on some bills. $85,000 in bills, I asked. Well, not just bills. We wanted to be able to help the family. Your Uncle Bob's been struggling since his diabetes got worse. Michelle's been having trouble making her car payments. We thought you'd want to help if you knew how much everyone was struggling. So you decided to help yourself to my money without asking. We knew you'd say no. Nancy's voice was getting higher, more desperate. You always say no when family needs help. We thought if we just took care of everyone, you'd understand eventually. Understand that you drugged me and stole from me. We didn't drug you. You had too much to drink and I had one drink, the one you made, the one you insisted I finish even when I said I was tired. Nancy opened her mouth to argue, but Tyler cut her off. Mom, just stop. Emma's not stupid, and neither am I. We know what you did. He turned to me. Do you want to call the police from here, or should we go somewhere else? Here, I said, standing up and pulling out my phone. I want them to see exactly what happens when you steal from people. The Kern County Sheriff's deputy who responded to my call was a middle-aged woman named Officer Rodriguez, who took one look at my bruised face and immediately asked if I needed medical attention. I'm okay, I said. I just want to report a theft. She interviewed me on the front porch, while Gary and Nancy watched from the living room window like trapped animals. I showed her the bank transfers, the text messages from family members, and the photos Tyler had taken of my bruised face. This is definitely something we need to investigate, Officer Rodriguez said after reviewing the evidence. Identity theft involving this amount of money is a felony. The domestic violence component makes it even more serious. What happens next? I'll file an initial report today. A detective will be assigned to the case tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I need to speak with your parents. Gary and Nancy were called outside for questioning. Gary maintained his innocence, claiming he had no idea how the money transfers had occurred. Nancy stuck to her story about confusion and misunderstandings. Mr. Miller, Officer Rodriguez said, your daughter is alleging that you accessed her bank account without permission and transferred $85,000 to yourself and other family members. She's also alleging that you struck her during an argument this morning. That's ridiculous, Gary said. I've never seen Emma's bank account. I don't even know what bank she uses. And I certainly didn't hit her. She probably got that bruise from drinking too much and falling down. Officer Rodriguez looked at me, then back at Gary. Sir, are you saying your daughter is lying about being struck? I'm saying she's confused. She's been under a lot of stress, and she had quite a bit to drink last night. Sometimes when people black out, they imagine things that didn't happen. I felt Tyler tense beside me, but Officer Rodriguez held up a hand to keep him quiet. Mr. Miller, I need you to understand that false accusations against a law enforcement officer are also a crime. Are you absolutely certain you didn't strike your daughter this morning? Gary's confidence wavered slightly. Look, we had an argument. Maybe things got a little heated, but I didn't assault anyone. A little heated, how? Nancy jumped in. It was just a family disagreement that got out of hand. You know how these things go. Emma's been away for so long, and there's been some tension. Maybe Gary raised his voice, but that's all. Officer Rodriguez made notes in her pad. Mrs. Miller, did you witness this argument? Well, yes, but it wasn't what Emma's making it out to be. Did you see your husband strike your daughter? A long pause. It was just a little slap. Emma was being disrespectful, saying terrible things about our family. Gary just lost his temper for a second. Gary shot Nancy a look that could have killed her on the spot. So you're confirming that your husband did in fact strike your daughter? Nancy realized her mistake. I mean, it wasn't like that. Ma'am, either he hit her or he didn't. Which is it? He didn't mean to hurt her, Nancy said weakly. Officer Rodriguez closed her notepad. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I'm going to need you both to come to the station for formal questioning. This is now a criminal investigation involving felony theft and domestic assault. Gary's face went purple. This is insane. You're going to arrest us because our daughter is having some kind of breakdown? Sir, I'm not arresting anyone at this moment, but I am asking you to cooperate with our investigation. If you're innocent, as you claim, then you have nothing to worry about. We're not going anywhere without a lawyer, Gary said. That's your right. The detective will contact you tomorrow to schedule an interview. In the meantime, I strongly advise both of you not to contact your daughter or attempt to influence any witnesses. After Officer Rodriguez left, Tyler and I sat in my rental car in the driveway, both of us emotionally drained. You okay? He asked. No, but I will be. I started the engine. Tyler, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Anything. How long have they been planning this? Really? Tyler was quiet for a long moment, staring out the passenger window at the house where we'd grown up. Remember when I called you at Christmas? When I said they'd been asking about you? I nodded. Gary and Nancy had apparently pumped Tyler for information about my life in Portland during his holiday visit. It wasn't just casual questions. Dad sat me down and grilled me for like an hour about your job, your salary, where you lived, whether you had a boyfriend. Mom kept asking if you'd mentioned anything about investments or savings. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought they were just being nosy parents. I didn't think. Tyler ran his hands through his hair. God, Emma, I should have warned you. I should have seen this coming. It's not your fault, isn't it? I'm the one who gave Mom your phone number. I'm the one who told her about your engineering job and your apartment. I basically gave them all the information they needed to set this up. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. Tyler, you were trying to help family reconcile. That's not a crime. What they did is, we drove to my hotel in silence. I'd booked a room at a Holiday Inn near the airport, planning to fly back to Portland that evening. But now I knew I wasn't going anywhere until this was resolved. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and met with Detective Sarah Chen at the Kern County Sheriff's Department. Detective Chen was younger than I'd expected, probably early 30s, with an efficiency that reminded me of the best project managers I'd worked with. I've reviewed Officer Rodriguez's report, she said, spreading the case file across her desk. This is pretty straightforward from a legal standpoint. The evidence is clear: unauthorized access to your accounts, transfers to family members, documentation of the assault. The question is whether your parents will cooperate or if we'll need to build a more comprehensive case. What does cooperation look like? Full restitution of the stolen funds, admission of guilt, cooperation with returning any money that's already been spent. In exchange, we might be able to work out a plea agreement that avoids jail time. And if they don't cooperate, then we prosecute to the full extent of the law. Identity theft of this amount is a felony punishable by up to 3 years in prison. Add in the domestic violence charge, and your father could be looking at significant jail time. I thought about Gary's smug expression when he denied everything to Officer Rodriguez. I don't think they're going to cooperate. Then we'll build an airtight case. I've already contacted the bank to freeze the accounts where your money was transferred. We'll need statements from all the recipients of the transfers, documentation of your parents' financial history, and evidence of premeditation. Premeditation? Detective Chen pulled out a folder. I did some preliminary research this morning. Your parents have been in significant debt for the past 18 months. Credit cards maxed out, behind on their mortgage, car payments in default. The timing of this family reunion, combined with their sudden spending on house renovations, suggests this wasn't an impulsive act. How do you prove that? Financial records, witness statements, physical evidence. For example, did you notice anything unusual about the drink your mother made you? I thought back to the Moscow Mule. How unusually strong it had tasted. How quickly I'd become drowsy. It tasted different from what I expected. Stronger, and I fell asleep much faster than normal. We'll need to test your blood and urine for traces of sedatives. It's been over 24 hours, so we might not find anything, but it's worth trying." The next few hours were a blur of medical tests, paperwork, and phone calls. Detective Chen was thorough and professional, but she also seemed genuinely angry about what had happened to me. "Cases like this make me sick," she said, as we waited for the lab results. "Financial abuse within families is more common than people think, but it's usually hard to prosecute because the victims don't want to press charges. The fact that you're willing to see this through could help a lot of other people." "Other people?" "Your parents have a history with local law enforcement, mostly small-time stuff, bad checks, disputes with creditors, complaints from neighbors about noise and property damage. But there's a pattern of behavior that suggests this isn't their first time manipulating people for money." That afternoon, Detective Chen and I drove to my parents' house to execute a search warrant. Gary and Nancy weren't home. Tyler later told me they'd gone to a lawyer's office, but the detective was able to collect evidence with the help of a forensics team. They found my laptop charger in the guest room, which I hadn't packed because I'd been too upset to think clearly. More importantly, they found traces of Ambien on the copper mug that had been used for my Moscow Mule. Nancy had apparently washed it, but hadn't done a thorough job. "That's our smoking gun," Detective Chen said, holding up the evidence bag containing the mug. "Combined with the financial records and witness statements, this should be enough to move forward with formal charges." Word of the investigation spread quickly through our extended family. By Tuesday, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from relatives who'd heard various versions of the story. Uncle Bob called first, his voice strained and apologetic. "Emma, I had no idea where that money came from. Gary told me you'd asked him to help out family members who were struggling financially. I never would have accepted it if I'd known it was stolen." "I believe you, Uncle Bob. Detective Chen said you've been cooperative with returning the money." "Of course. I transferred it back as soon as the bank would let me. But Emma, I feel terrible that I didn't question it more. $18,000 is a lot of money. I should have known something was wrong." Cousin Michelle's reaction was very different. She called me Tuesday evening, screaming into the phone about how I was destroying the family over money. "You have plenty," she yelled. "You make 6 figures. You live in some fancy city. We're all struggling down here, and you can't even help your own family without making it a federal case. Michelle, they drugged me and stole the money without asking. How is that helping family? Gary said you were drunk and probably don't remember agreeing to help everyone out. Now you're embarrassed and trying to cover it up by making up stories about being drugged." I hung up on her. Derek, Michelle's boyfriend, called an hour later to apologize for Michelle's behavior and confirm that he'd returned the $12,000 that had been transferred to his account. "I tried to talk sense into her," he said, "but she's convinced that your parents wouldn't lie to her. She thinks you're overreacting. What do you think?" "I think anyone who drugs their own daughter to steal her money is capable of lying about pretty much anything." The most surprising call came from Tyler Wednesday morning. He'd been staying at a friend's house since the police interview, avoiding our parents entirely. "Emma, you need to know something. I went by the house last night to get some of my stuff, and I overheard Mom and Dad talking to their lawyer." "What did they say?" "They're planning to claim that you gave them permission to access your accounts. They're going to say you authorized the transfers before you went to bed, and then forgot about it because you were drunk. That's insane. The transfers happened at 3 a.m. "I know, but their lawyer thinks it might create enough reasonable doubt to avoid conviction, especially since there's no recording of you explicitly refusing to give them the money." I felt my stomach drop. "You think they might get away with this?" "I think they're going to try, but Emma, there's something else. Something that might help." "What?" "I've been recording our conversations with them for the past 6 months. I nearly dropped the phone." "What?" "Ever since Christmas, when they were asking all those questions about you, I've been using a recording app on my phone whenever I talk to them. I had a feeling they were planning something, but I didn't know what." "Tyler, please tell me you have them talking about stealing my money." "Better than that. I have Dad talking about how much money you probably have saved, and Mom discussing the best way to get you to come to the family reunion. They never explicitly say they're going to steal from you, but the intent is pretty clear." Detective Chen was ecstatic when Tyler brought her the recordings. "This establishes premeditation beyond any reasonable doubt," she said, after listening to several key conversations. "Your parents spent months planning this theft. No jury is going to believe they thought you gave them permission. By Thursday, formal charges had been filed. Gary was charged with identity theft, financial exploitation of a family member, and domestic assault. Nancy was charged as an accessory to theft and conspiracy. Both were released on bail, but ordered to have no contact with me or Tyler. The local newspaper picked up the story Friday morning. Local couple charged with stealing $85,000 from daughter during family reunion. Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times on social media, with most commenters expressing outrage at my parents' behavior. I also started getting calls from other people who claimed to have been financially exploited by Gary and Nancy over the years. A former neighbor said Gary had borrowed tools and never returned them. A co-worker of Nancy's said she'd asked for money for various emergencies that turned out to be fabricated. Your case is opening a lot of doors, Detective Chen told me. People are finally feeling safe enough to come forward about your parents' behavior. The next few months were a marathon of court appearances, depositions, and legal maneuvering. Gary and Nancy hired an expensive defense attorney, paid for, I later learned, with money they'd borrowed against their house. Their defense strategy was exactly what Tyler had predicted. Claimed that I'd given permission for the transfers while drunk, then forgotten about it due to alcohol-induced memory loss. It might have worked if not for the physical evidence. The Ambien residue on the mug proved that I'd been drugged. The bank's security footage showed that the transfers had been initiated at 3:17 a.m., when I would have been unconscious. Most damaging of all, Tyler's recordings demonstrated that the theft had been planned for months. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Maria Santos, painted a clear picture of a calculated crime committed by parents who saw their daughter as nothing more than a source of money. The defendants didn't steal from a stranger, she told the jury during opening statements. They stole from their own daughter, a young woman who had worked tirelessly to build a secure future for herself, despite a childhood marked by financial instability and exploitation. They drugged her, violated her privacy, and stole her life savings. Then, when she confronted them about it, Mr. Miller physically assaulted her. Gary and Nancy's attorney, a slick-talking man named Robert Harrison, tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter who was exaggerating the situation to punish her parents for past grievances. Emma Miller is a successful young woman who makes an excellent salary, he argued. $85,000, while certainly not insignificant, represents less than 1 year's income for her. Meanwhile, her parents are struggling retirees who were simply trying to help their extended family during a difficult time. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 full days, recounting not just the theft itself, but the lifetime of financial manipulation that had led up to it. It was emotionally exhausting, but also strangely liberating to finally tell the complete truth about my childhood. Tyler's testimony was equally powerful. He described years of watching our parents take money from me, including the college fund theft that had driven me to leave home at 18. They never saw Emma as their daughter, he said from the witness stand. They saw her as their retirement plan. The most dramatic moment came when Gary took the stand in his own defense. Under cross-examination by Maria Santos, he was forced to admit that he had no legitimate source of income for the expensive house renovations, no explanation for how he'd accessed my phone while I slept, and no credible reason for believing I'd authorized middle-of-the-night financial transfers. Mr. Miller, Maria said, your daughter testified that you struck her when she confronted you about the theft. Do you deny that you hit her? Gary's lawyer had obviously coached him to avoid admitting to the assault, but Gary's temper got the better of him. She was being disrespectful, he snapped. After everything we'd done for her, she comes into our house and accuses us of being criminals. She needed to learn some respect. So you did hit her? Gary realized his mistake too late. It was just a slap. She was out of line. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Gary was sentenced to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. Nancy received 6 months in county jail and 2 years of probation. Both were ordered to pay full restitution plus interest, totaling $94,000. They were also ordered to have no contact with me for 5 years, which was honestly the most valuable part of the sentence. The financial recovery took longer than the legal proceedings. While the court had ordered full restitution, my parents didn't actually have $94,000 sitting in a bank account. The money had to be recovered piece by piece, from the accounts where it had been transferred, from the sale of their renovated house, from Gary's pension fund. It took 8 months to recover the full amount, but eventually every penny was returned with interest. More importantly, I recovered something I hadn't even realized I'd lost: the ability to trust my own judgment. For years, I'd second-guessed myself whenever my parents asked for money or made promises they couldn't keep. I'd wondered if maybe I was being too harsh, too unforgiving, too focused on money instead of family relationships. The trial proved that my instincts had been right all along. Gary and Nancy Miller were exactly what I'd thought they were: selfish, manipulative people who had never changed and never would change. 6 months after the trial ended, I bought my house in Portland. It's a small craftsman bungalow in southeast Portland, with a garden and a front porch, and the kind of solid construction that will last for decades. I invited Tyler to visit for the housewarming party. He drove up from Sacramento, where he'd moved to get away from the family drama in Bakersfield. "It's perfect," he said, standing in my living room and looking out at the garden. "It's exactly what you always said you wanted." "The best part is that it's really mine," I said. "No one can take it away from me." Tyler hugged me. "Emma, I'm so proud of you. For fighting back, for not letting them win, for building something beautiful despite everything they put you through. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You've always been the strongest person I know." What I've learned from this experience goes far beyond the specific details of what Gary and Nancy did to me. It's about recognizing patterns of abuse and manipulation, understanding that family relationships should be based on mutual respect rather than obligation, and learning to trust yourself even when people you love are telling you that your perceptions are wrong. Financial abuse within families is more common than most people realize. It often starts small: borrowing money without repaying it, using guilt and manipulation to extract loans that everyone knows will never be returned, gradually escalating to more serious violations of trust and boundaries. The victims of family financial abuse face a unique set of challenges. Unlike abuse by strangers, family financial abuse is often dismissed or minimized by law enforcement and the legal system. Victims are told they should be more forgiving, that family is more important than money, that they should work things out privately. What these well-meaning people don't understand is that financial abuse is never really about money. It's about power, control, and a fundamental lack of respect for the victim's autonomy and dignity. Gary and Nancy Miller didn't steal my money because they were desperate or struggling. They stole it because they believed they had the right to take whatever they wanted from me, whenever they wanted it. The money was just a means to an end, the end being continued control over my life. Breaking free from that control required more than just pressing charges or recovering the stolen funds. It required fundamentally changing how I thought about family, obligation, and my own worth. I've learned that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being over family harmony. It's okay to set boundaries and enforce them, even when those boundaries hurt people's feelings. It's okay to demand respect from people who claim to love me. Most importantly, I've learned that I get to define what family means to me. Gary and Nancy Miller are my biological parents, but they stopped being my family the moment they decided their wants were more important than my rights. My real family now consists of Tyler, a handful of extended relatives who supported me through the legal battle, close friends who have proven their loyalty and trustworthiness over years of friendship, and the community I've built in Portland around shared values and mutual respect. This family might not share my DNA, but they share something more important: the understanding that love is demonstrated through actions, not words, and that true family members protect and support each other rather than exploit and manipulate. It's been 2 years since the theft, and I can honestly say that my life is better now than it was before Gary and Nancy Miller stole my money. That might sound strange, but it's true. Before the theft, I was successful but isolated. I'd built a good career and accumulated savings, but I'd also built walls around myself that kept everyone at a distance. I was so focused on protecting myself from being hurt again that I was missing out on genuine connections with people who actually deserved my trust. The experience of fighting back, of having Tyler stand by me, of seeing the community rally around me during the trial, taught me that not everyone is looking to take advantage of my success. There are people in the world who want to see me succeed, who celebrate my achievements without wondering what they can get from me. I'm in a relationship now with someone I met through a hiking group. David is a middle school teacher who drives a 10-year-old Honda and thinks my biggest flaw is that I work too many hours. He's never asked me for money, never suggested that my success obligates me to support anyone else, never made me feel like my worth is tied to my bank account. When I told him about the theft and the trial, his reaction was exactly what I needed to hear. I'm proud of you for fighting back. No one should have to deal with that, especially from their own parents. I've also started volunteering with a local organization that helps victims of family financial abuse. It's surprising how many people reach out after hearing my story, sharing their own experiences of being exploited by relatives who claim to love them. The most common question I get is whether I regret pressing charges against my parents. People seem to expect me to express some remorse, some lingering guilt about sending my own father to prison. I don't feel guilty. Gary Miller chose to steal from me, chose to drug me, chose to hit me when I confronted him about it. The consequences of those choices were entirely predictable. I didn't send him to prison, his own actions did. What I regret is the years I spent hoping he would change, the money I gave him before finally setting boundaries, the emotional energy I wasted trying to maintain a relationship with people who had never shown me genuine love or respect. I regret that it took me until I was 29 years old to realize that I deserved better. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret demanding justice. I don't regret choosing my own well-being over their comfort. And I don't regret sharing my story, even though it means admitting to the world that my own parents saw me as nothing more than a source of money. I got my money back, my dignity back, and my life back. More importantly, I learned I never have to accept being treated as less than I deserve, even by the people who call themselves family. If you've lived through something like this, know that you're not alone. You have the right to set boundaries, to protect yourself, and to decide who truly counts as family. Choose the life and the people who honor your worth, because you deserve far more than those who ever tried to tear you down.